campus today on such a beautiful day with mixed feelings with all the turbulence that's taking place. I just was reminded about how privileged I am, and that we are as a community to have such an amazing place to meet and gather and connect. And that, you know, we all have this amazing opportunity and responsibility to care for country as it cares for us. And I find when I do cross campus that it always reminds me of that privilege. So connecting with you is also a privilege. And so today we are meeting for our third year of the Work Integrated Learning Community of Practice. So welcome those who are new, and hello again to those who have been coming along on the journey. It's really exciting. So today we are going to start with a few announcements and upcoming events. Then we're going to introduce our two wonderful speakers who will talk for about 15 minutes with questions and answers to 20 minutes each. And then we've got time for lots of questions and answers and reflections and networking. So that's the agenda for today. Would anyone else like to add to that agenda? Eating. Eating is very important, so eat away. So just a few announcements and upcoming events. I just wanted to let you know that we put out a call, as you know, those of you who have been coming along to the events, for an extended leadership group, and we were had a wonderful response. And so we now have quite a few new members who are supporting the organisation of events. If you can put up your hand if you're on the leadership group. Yes, you are. So these wonderful people are helping to organise, and we always welcome more. So if you're coming along and you feel like you'd like to even do a small part, get in contact with us, because there's always things that we can do, and it is a community of practice. So it's led by the group. So if there's things you'd like to, request or like to participate in, that's what we do. So the aim of the group is to support each other, to let each other know about opportunities, to share challenges and responses to challenges and opportunities in the work integrated learning space at Macquarie. So please do become a member. I'm assuming most people here are members, but let others know. So I know there's always new academics coming into the work integrated learning space, and also in the professional space, always people coming in and out. So let them know about this community of practice, and if they're more than welcome to come along. So in terms of events, there's lots of events that take place in the WIL space throughout Australia, and we try and keep you up to date with some of those through our invitations and when we do a summary. I just put a few here for your knowledge, but we will also email these out. I guess of importance is our events for the year. We've got quite a range in response to ideas that were sent to us at the end of last year. So the next WIL CoP will be looking at Professor Richie Howard and Kat Coates for the MQ Partnership Manager on Thursday, 10th of April, and then invitation will come out very soon. The other, I guess, updates, there's many events that are happening through WIL Australia, which is the new name for ASIN. So if you're not a member or regularly get on their newsletter, I recommend that you do that, because they advertise lots of events that are taking place. And one that's happening that might be of interest is being hosted by Cradle and WIL Australia, and that's looking at Gen AI and WIL. And they're launching some resources which are also accessible at the moment. So if you want to know how to access any of those, let us know, but there will be a link that we'll send out. And also the IJ WIL journal has a special issue just recently launched on wellbeing and WIL, which is a topic I think close to all of our hearts. We support our students to maintain their wellbeing during and after placements, and also ourselves who are all dedicated in that area, but know that it can be quite challenging in many ways. So there's some really interesting work and research that's being shared there. And a final announcement is the WIL Toolkit has been launched, and I'm just going to hand it quickly over to Jen, who's leading that.
I'm just going to say, woohoo! This has been a long time coming. Can everybody hear me, or do you need me to? Yes.
So yes, it's been a long time coming, and the way we ended up getting it actually live was to house it under the MQBS Education Services Hub, which was also launching recently, and we just got a page there. So it has very basic content at the moment. Essentially, it's a skeleton with some definitions or some MQBS focused definitions because of where it's housed. But you'll notice that then there are concertina sections that you can expand out. And for example, I've just managed to add one on reflection that very much is based on the Reflection for Learning WIL CoP that we had last year. And so then shares those resources available for access at any time if you need a reminder. And many of you will have received an email from me just about an hour ago. Because it's housed under MQBS, I had to send an email, or I had to add email addresses for anybody outside of MQBS. And so if anybody doesn't have access, if you just try to click the link when we share these slides, if you just try and click the link, if you can't get through, then you can request access and we can add you. And that's that.
Excellent. Okay, that's all from me. Unless there are any other events or announcements people have in their own space, you could let us know now or email us and we can distribute it through the membership list. So I'm going to hand it over to Aggie to do some introductions.
Hi everyone. So we're going to see two presenters today, Associate Professor Shane McGee and Professor Penny Sweeting. I'll introduce Associate Professor Shane McGee first. He's a Director of Education in the Department of Applied Finance at the Macquarie University Business School with 13 years of finance industry experience and 20 years of teaching industry professionals in post-experience courses at MQBS. Shane now extends his expertise to undergraduate and pre-experience postgraduate courses. He is passionate about helping students develop industry-relevant skills and foster connections with industry professionals throughout their studies. Let's welcome Shane.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so Department of Applied Finance, Macquarie Business School. Yeah, thank you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, sorry. You're interdisciplinary.
Yes. So, can you hear me okay? Do I need the mic?
You just find that mic is there,
Yeah,
so you're all
okay.
set.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me here. I just wanted to talk to you about what we have been doing in the Department of Applied Finance, looking at not just a course-wide approach to WIL, but a whole department approach. So we have two main degrees, two specialised degrees, the Bachelor of Applied Finance and also the Master of Banking and Finance. And our focus on these two degrees is ensuring that students have multiple opportunities to engage with WIL and also to engage with industry professionals. So we took a whole department-wide approach. So what I want to talk about is where that came from, how we scaffolded WIL across the two courses, and also I'll give you examples of the types of WIL activities that we have done and are doing this year. All right, so 2 degrees. For the Bachelor of Applied Finance degree, we scaffolded it as embedded WIL in one first-year unit, then in 2 second-year units, 2 third-year units, and then full WIL in the capstone. So we've used the embedded WIL to build up to the last unit in the capstone. Similarly, in the Master of Banking and Finance, the structure of the Master of Banking and Finance is 4 foundation, 4 essential core. 4 foundation, 4 essential core, 4 units from a specialisation, and then 4 units in the flexible zone. So we only had 3 units to choose from that all students would do. for embedded will. So we're doing embedded will in those first three 8,000 essential core level units, and then that prepares students for full will in the capstone. Okay. So where did all this come from? So it kind of came, we had course reaccreditations for both of these degrees at the same time. That was what, 2 years ago now. 2020, what is it now? 25. So 2023, we went through that. And then did all the changes through last year to go live this year. So we looked at WIL holistically across the whole department. And we looked at what types of activities do we think our students would like. And so where we kind of landed is we've got a mixture of different types of WIL activities. So for embedded WIL, we have some units who will have an industry guest speaker on a certain topic, and then students will do a related project. In some cases, we've actually backfilled that. So, for example, in the first year, one of the first year units in the Bachelor of Applied Finance, students do evaluation of an analysis of a company listed on the Australian Securities Exchange. They choose that company themselves, and then they do a full analysis of that company. So that's been going on for quite a number of years now. So we try to, how can and that in itself is related to industry, to real world stuff. So we try to think of, well, how can we actually add to that? Not change it, but just add to it. And that's what we did in the first year unit. We're actually having someone this session come in from industry who does this stuff day in, day out. And they're going to talk about how this is done in practice, and then students will do it. So the students can see the connection to the real world, not just hearing it from academics. So that was one approach we took. We also do industry certifications. So in the finance industry, we've got key financial data providers, databases. So we've got Icon, which used to be Reuters. We've got a company called FactSet and also S&P Capital IQ, and they provide financial data information to the whole finance industry. So we're getting, in some of our units, we're having industry certifications. One in FactSet and one in S&P Capital IQ. And that way our students are using technology that they'll use in the real world when they get out after graduating. And the other thing that we're doing is we're doing simulations. So there's a company based out of the UK called Amplify Me, and they run simulations, finance simulations. They've got some in banking, some in markets, and some in funds management areas. They do this for lots of universities around the world. So it's essentially to put students into a simulation for a few hours, experiencing what they would do in the real world in that situation. So we're using that across quite a few of our units, 3 units, and students will do different ones. And again, the idea is then to also have someone engage with them from industry, and so the students can then reflect on what they've learned and where they're going to. And then we have industry partner projects as full WIL in our 2 capstone units. And so they're essentially industry projects brought to us by partners. Okay. So this was how we scaffolded it across the Bachelor of Applied Finance. First year, as I mentioned, industry guest and a related project. Across second year, we have 1 simulation, one industry certification. We do a similar thing in third year in our two designated units, and then that's building everyone up. for the final industry projects in the capstone. Similar idea in the, sorry, let me just come back. The industry certifications are different from second to third, and also the simulations differ. Then in the third year, sorry, in the Master of Banking and Finance, we've got the 3 embedded WIL units. Again, we've got kind of stepped it up a bit here in preparation for the industry partner projects. This is more like mini industry partner type projects. So we've got 2 units that have industry guest speaker and a related project, but these are a bit higher level than what we're doing at the undergrad level. We do 1 simulation, which is the same one that we do in second year in the undergrad, and then that flows through to the capstone with 2 industry projects in there. I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts? Yeah,
Sorry, I just.
you're right.
Too soon. Thanks, Shane. That was really interesting to see that starting off, you know, on with baby steps, so to speak, and then moving up to far more complex projects at the end. Given that this is a new, yes, you're building on the practices that you already had in place. I was wondering, what's your approach to evaluating those changes that you've made, and evaluating those from a student perspective and from partner perspective?
It's first session we're doing this. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we will have to do that.
Yeah,
I guess anecdotally, it's students and the feedback we receive from them. And it's more unit specific as well. Especially with guest lecturers coming in, and the UC relationship with that speaker. But yeah.
no, that's always the hard piece, isn't it? Doing the big
Looking back.
looking back over the whole program. Yeah, we seem to do it good at that sort of unit level.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's what we didn't want to have an ad hoc approach to WIL.
Yeah.
We wanted
Yeah.
to scaffold it across the whole degree. But they kind of stem from how the Bachelor of Commerce was defined as well, taking that approach. Yeah.
Oh, no, Annie. I was wondering, in that slide where you show kind of how it's scaffolded from unit to unit, I'm wondering if the unit conveners of the units that are not in that scaffolding, are they aware of what's happening? Do their units contributed to it? Like, how is that? I guess I'm just curious how this plays beyond.
Okay, so we've got second year, we've got three real units in second, 3 units in second year that are essential core. So we strategically chose 2. The other one is very industry related in fintech, financial technology. So we didn't go down that. But she's aware as well.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of work by the course directors in, working with the UCs and getting this set up. And fortunately, Cynthia, who's taking that tech unit, is also a course director for the Master of Banking and Finance. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. Unexpectedly hot. You mentioned that all these changes came out of the internal.
Yeah, that was the motivation for it.
I was just wondering, like, how I'm going through the same thing.
Yeah.
So was this a recommendation of the panel, or was it industry or student-led initiative, and how long did it take?
Okay. So it wasn't really, okay. So one of the things that did come out of the panel, so we've got a Bachelor of Applied Finance, and one of the things that came out of the panel is really how applied is it? So that's been generated quite a few conversations internally. And so we took that on board and started to think, well, how can we formalize it? Because we do have guest industry speakers coming quite a bit. And we do ad hoc things in terms of, for example, using financial databases. We had been trialing the simulations for a little while as well. We thought, how could we formalize that in a rule framework? Yeah.
How long did it take to actually, you said it was 2 years, was it? Implemented? Oh, sorry.
So we started having, so again, it was looked at from the broad reaccreditation review. And so we made lots of changes across our 2 degrees. So that, I would say, from when we started the conversations on WIL, probably 12 months to get to the design.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now,
And then 1 more year for the implementation.
yeah, now we're implementing. Yeah. So there'll be a few teething problems, but yeah. And so the good thing about with the simulations, we actually make them available to all students as well. Yeah. We pay for it. So. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. I love the idea of that course wide because, often it's just in isolation in a unit. Do you scaffold, and I know you've started, do you scaffold like connections between, or are you planning to scaffold connections between one experience to the experience to the next experience within some kind of reflection?
There's something we can look at doing. We haven't thought about that at the moment. At the moment, it's just how do we do it within a unit. But yeah, I guess when we get to 3rd year, and for example, the simulations. Yeah. So when kind of in the 2nd year simulation, students will write a reflective report on that and about where they see this and how it relates to their career path. In the 3rd year unit that has that simulation, they'll do a presentation on their experience. So we could relate the two and have see how their career paths or thinking on their career path has evolved from year 2 to year 3. Yeah. Yeah, and we wouldn't really do that until next year.
Yeah, no.
All through the 1st simulation. Yeah,
Great.
so that's good.
What did the simulation sort of look like, and does Gen AI play any sort of role in the first simulation?
Okay, there's not Gen A, not Gen AI. So they're actually, okay. So the first one is on financial markets. So it puts the students in a situation like they're in a trading room in a bank, and they have to outperform each other. So it's pretty competitive. And a similar one in 3rd year, but it's more quantitative. So they're actually competing against each other to get to an outcome within, it's only 2 hours. Yeah, but there's no Gen AI. Yeah.
About certification as well. On the previous slide, so I think it's for the simulation, right? There's some certification attached, isn't there? Or is it separate? Oh yeah,
There's separate ones.
Oh yeah. What are those?
Okay, so there's companies like FactSet, which is a financial industry database provider, and also S&P Capital IQ, and you can actually get certificates through them, like badges.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So that's what we're looking at there, and then students know how to use what people in the real world use.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to just giving them static data and they use spreadsheets to analyze it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Keith. Keith's the convener for one of the undergraduate capstone.
Yeah, and really cool sharing, having all these changes pushed through and been awesome seeing students enjoy and benefit. I was just wondering if anyone here has a quant unit. It seems like a popular assessment in WIL is reflection, but students don't do finance to write reflections. They do it to do maths. Wondering if anyone does quant units, like engineering, something like that, and has had success with reflections. Just in my own unit, it's supposed to do reflection, And I'm dreading it, students are dreading it. We want to like say, finance grad essays, finding if any engineers or scientists have had to do something similar.
Have been fun, but, unfortunately, it's reflection, like, but you couch it in a different way. You don't say reflection, you say analysis, you say those sort of things.
But it's still a 500 word count piece of thing, which people hate, right? I mean, I guess.
Well, we're building those students up for you, Keith, because in first year finance, it's general reflection.
So I think that's a great point, we're learning how to do reflection, but another thing is it doesn't have to be a 500-word written reflection. It can be an output that they would do in the workplace, like an analysis of something that they would share with their supervisor in the workplace, something that's realistic, or it could be something like, what have you learned through this that you would put on your CV or in a cover letter, and then they have to write that in a format that they would actually use rather than a 500-word written reflection.
Oh, that's clever, a piece of a resume of how it is.
Little versions are shown as a result of learning a particular skill. This is how I learned it.
Well, they
You could
could,
even call it like build your resume
Yeah.
assessment task.
or you could link it, you could do something on LinkedIn.
Or like a portfolio thing
Yeah.
where they show their first analysis and their third analysis, and they write about how they got from here to there, which is something they might show and talk about in an interview or something like that. And George
Yeah.
sounds like he has it.
Yeah, pair that with, so a resume write-up, and then pair that with an actual follow-up interview, like a mock interview.
Oh, like what you actually give to the student?
Where they would have to explain to you in a direct thing where the question is, they know the question in advance, because typical questions for an interview, you say typical questions you get an interview, it's like,
And one thing that we do in business analysis, we do that CDP and another assessment, but for the reflection, we get them to create an infographic, kind of visualization of how they can introduce themselves and explain the skills that they have. And it is quite creative, and they do many of different things. And so this is exactly what we wanted to think about. You're going to present yourself, and you're going to go somewhere and say, this is the degree that I have, these are the skill sets that I have, and sell yourself that person through a visualization. So you still have that written part, but that infographic is a significant part of that.
Thanks.
And it's kind of challenging the students. Some of them have no clue how to do this. It's an adventure.
Yeah, oh, good. Just about the interviews, that's a really good idea. We want them to be able to verbalize their work, but we have 200 students. We have big ones like that. We have big 200 student subjects where you've got to do 200 interviews.
I've done it for about 100 plus,
Wow.
but not for 200, but it's scalable.
What tutorial teachers?
You got the big group in.
Not
Okay.
small.
It's scalable.
Do you do it through tutorial teachers or yourself, or?
Two markers.
Right. Yeah. Oh, thanks for the ideas.
That's fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really love that we can learn from each other, get some ideas for assessment class. That's fantastic. We are also welcoming Professor Penny Sweeting today. She's an experienced nurse academic and university leader with a strong background in developing and leading innovation in higher education. She's deeply committed to enhancing academic quality and creating meaningful learning experiences with a particular focus on WIL initiatives that bridge the gap between theory and practice. With expertise in strategic program development, student engagement, and nursing education, Penny has played a key role in shaping future-focused curricula that prepare students for the evolving demands of healthcare. She's passionate about strengthening partnerships between universities and industry to ensure graduates are equipped with the skills and experience needed for professional success. Let's welcome Penny.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's really good to be here today and be able to share my experiences in this space. So I'm Penny. I joined the university in December, so still quite new and getting used to the lingo around work integrated learning used at Macquarie. So today I'm really focusing on, I guess, what we would call full WIL here, but embedded WIL is still a huge part of nursing education and a bit of a given. So when we talk about work integrated learning for nursing education, it's a huge part of what we do, but there hasn't been any innovation in that space since, gosh, the dinosaurs roamed the earth. Probably since we moved from hospital to university education. So we've been doing the same thing for a very long time. So today I'm really going to focus on the challenges with this old model and also the opportunities for reimagining work integrated learning and some of the things that we're planning to do in the nursing space. Now, I probably forgot to mention that Macquarie University is in the process of designing a new nursing course, and I've been brought on board to help design and get us really through the accreditation process. So a few fun facts about nursing. Why nursing and why now? As you can see, there are plenty of us roaming around the world. There's about 29 million nurses, and we make up 60% of the healthcare workforce. And we see that in Australia as well. So we're still the largest health professional group, close to 400,000 practicing nurses. And this data is a little bit old, but the best that we had. Sorry to our allied health professional friends. They get lumped into one big group and they're the second biggest group. So that's your speech pathologists, physiotherapists, all lumped together and still there in the second. Now, despite how numerous we seem, there's about a 4.5 million shortage in nurses worldwide, and we're seeing that in Australia as well. So it's getting harder to keep nurses in the profession, but also attract people into nursing education. And it's estimated that by 2035, close to 80,000 nurses will be the gap that we need to fill. So it's really important that we think about new ways of doing nursing education and trying to attract fresh faces to the industry. Now, in health education, we're a highly regulated industry, and so we should be. Nurses have to go out there and deliver safe patient care, and organisations need to be able to provide the right type of education. So our governing body is the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council, or ANMAC, bit of a mouthful. They're pretty tough. They dictate really what we have to include in the course, how we structure it, and they also govern our work integrated learning. So for a nursing student, they have to do 800 hours of clinical placement, and it has to be across all healthcare contexts. So think your hospital surgical wards, your EDs, your GP clinics. We have to provide the full spectrum of placements. These hours can't include simulated learning. They actually have to be physically out in practice. But we also have to have simulated learning before they go on practice. We have to have WIL early in the course, but also late in the course. So that early introduction, get them used to the healthcare context, but also towards the end so they're ready to transition to become fully fledged registered nurses. Traditionally, they're unpaid placements at supernumerary because they're not counted in the numbers. So you can imagine that this is quite a burden for a lot of students. So like I said, there hasn't been many changes in WIL in nursing education for a long time. And some of you might be familiar with this traditional model. It's a block placement model. So students will go out on placement in blocks ranging from 2 weeks to 10 weeks. It's full-time hours, not lovely, 35 university hours, but 40 hours of full-time placement, and there's no flexibility. So if you've got family commitments, carers need to pick kids off, drop parents off somewhere, you can forget about it, because industry and universities have been traditionally non-flexible in how we deliver placements. And you can imagine the financial and social impact this has on students. Could you just imagine if today I said, okay, for 10 weeks, you're not going to be able to work. You can't do any of your hobbies because you're going to be really tired and you're going to be in a really demanding environment. I don't think many people will be jumping at that chance, especially when I say you're not going to get paid for it. The bills are still going to come in, and I want you to be thankful for the privilege to be out on placement. So this is why we think that there's new and better ways of doing things. Now, this might actually not sound very innovative, but for nursing and healthcare education, part-time placements are not a thing. So for our new program, we've designed a placement model where we can fit in the work integrated learning spread across the whole degree, where students will go out on placement starting off 2 days a week in semester 1 and gradually build up towards the end of the degree. The final placement we have is a 5-week full-time block to help them transition into full-time work. But it means that students will be able to juggle work and life and really integrate into the healthcare system. So there are 2 real reasons why I think this model will work. I think the really obvious one is the flexibility of it will be very appealing to adult learners. But also we feel that by having students integrated into industry for a longer period of time, they're going to be able to fit better into the teams, build their professional identity. And because we've got our own hospital, I will be right next door keeping an eye on things. But we really feel that we'll be able to scaffold the learning and tailor the scope of practice to the individual student instead of saying, okay, you can just do this no matter what your skills and ability are and hope for the best. So we think that this is going to be a benefit to the students, but also to the university. So our next steps, we're going through the accreditation process. Next time you see me, I'll probably have a few more grey hairs or much blonder because I like to dye them. And really, we have to convince ANMAC that this new model is the way forward. We've actually got industry buy-in already, which has been a really surprising thing for me because I thought industry might not like it, but they love it. So we've got industry on board. We just need to get ANMAC on board. But I'm really convinced that this is the best way to help students really engage in the nursing profession and really increase participation to people who traditionally would love to do nursing but are really put off by the placement models. So hopefully in a year's time, I'll be standing here telling you about, yes, we did it and this is what's happening in the WIL space. But until then, we'll plug away at accreditation. Thank you.
Ask you to ANMAC being like the accreditation body, are you like sort of allowed to do this hybrid model if they say you can't? Is there an issue like that as well?
So if ANMAC say no-go, then we can't do this hybrid model. They have stipulations in there around the hours and different elements of it, but technically there's nothing in their documents that say that we can't do this. But accrediting bodies are fickle beasts, so it'll just be a matter of convincing them. But I think because we've got our industry partners on board, I think that'll be a really positive step to say, actually, we're committed, they're committed, we can make this work.
Just a quick question. So the industry partners, is it mainly through the hospital?
So Macquarie Hospital, Ramsay have been interested in it. The Justice Health Networks have been quite interested in it as well, which was very surprising because I didn't think public would take it at all. But they've actually been surprisingly open and excited about different ways of doing it. And my theory is that having a student on placement for a registered nurse or any professional is really hard. It does increase the workload. So spreading that out, instead of having a student for a full week, if you've got a student for 2 days, it reduces some of the burden on the staff. So I think that's why industry quite like that model, but that's just a theory, untested.
And with the size of the cohort, how many students do you have to accommodate?
So we're aiming to have a small cohort to start with. So we're aiming for about 50 for our first intake, and then we'll increase to 100 students. So we're keeping it nice and small so we can do these innovative models and really contain the student experience and the quality of the education. You'll see that some nursing schools out there have thousands and thousands of students, but I say, how do you know who your students are if you've got thousands and thousands of students? We want to know every student's name, and we want them to feel really connected to us in the industry. So that's the plan until someone tries to give me thousands and thousands of students.
Following that, so is it the responsibility of the university to find the placement opportunity for this, not the
Yes.
students?
Yes, so that all falls onto us. So we have to negotiate all the contracts. We have to do all the have the placements, and we generally don't like students going out into the industry trying to negotiate their own placements, because in the past and from previous experiences, when students do that, it can be quite damaging between the relationship between a university and industry partners. So we take on that to preserve some of that relationship.
Is this model of part-time placement going to affect the way you assess the students?
No. So we've worked it out that we've fit the placement hours towards the end of the semesters, so we can do the simulated learning, prepare them for placement, but they will still do their formative assessment, which is halfway through, and summative assessment. In theory, it works, but our first round, we might get out there and we think, oh, that didn't work. But how we've sort of mapped it out, we think that it's doable and it shouldn't affect our assessment.
We do it for teaching if you want to.
Oh,
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
We'll have a coffee and I can get some ideas on that, because
Yeah, 2-3 days a week.
oh, fantastic. And that'll be a good example for ANMAC. Well, if teachers can do this and it's good for them, then we can do it.
Oh, it's fantastic for them. We actually don't allow it to be done much closer to each other. They can't reflect on what they've learned. They can't really process it. You process it differently, obviously, if you have time to take and implement feedback on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I'll take you up on that. Thank you.
Sure. Just confirming, did you say 800 hours? They are all unpaid hours?
800 unpaid hours.
Do you see that may change anytime soon in the future?
They're
I mean, like, to get paid?
They're likely to go up. So with the Accord, it came out that nursing students will get, I think it's like $300 a week, and for placements. But how that's being administered and all of that, it's all very up in the air and grey. So I think it's a good first step, but I haven't seen the details around that, and I'm not sure if that actually applies to our, say, international students. I don't think it does. Does it? Or yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought. And a significant proportion of our students will probably be international students, because it's a 2-year master's degree, very attractive. And those students have the same struggles as our domestic students, plus some, because they don't have their family support networks around them. So it's a real challenge.
Just a comment and a question. I can really see this working just because my sister literally just finished her degree in nursing, and her biggest complaint as a single mom was this block placement. So I think the flexibility is really great. My question is more to do with the flexibility in teaching. So if you've got the students doing placement for 2 days a week, what's the flexibility around, like, if they learn something new on placement that they haven't quite gotten to yet in the content? What's the flexibility like in there for teaching?
So with the how it's modeled, so they'll have 2 days, say Monday, Tuesday in class, and then at the end of the week, they'll have their placement. Depending on the type of skill that it is, we're still working through this, but our thing is that it should be tailored to the institution and the individual. So if you've got a student who is engaged and an experienced RN who's happy to walk or a student through a certain skill, then I think we should have that flexibility, but also being mindful that ultimately we're responsible for keeping the public safe. So just finding that right balance between organic experience on placement while also protecting the safety. I think it'll be easier with the hospital next door. I think the challenge will be for the students who are doing this in a public facility that we don't have those relationships with. But that's a really good point, and we're still working through those details.
I'm just curious, you mentioned that you've done some research or reach out to industry and that they're very keen. I'm wondering if you've spoken to prospective or current nursing students there, and I guess I'm imagining that they will all say, yes, sounds great, but I guess I'm wondering about nuance related to that, or possibly your case that you're putting together if you haven't done that.
So we have a student representative on our course advisory group, and they've been very keen on this idea, but definitely want to reach out to a few more nursing students to hear their experiences and whether this model would fit. From my previous role, definitely students would jump at the chance because it means that they can still fit in some work. But that's a really good point about getting those student stories to really emphasize why this is important.
Sorry, I wonder if a student is sick for a couple of weeks and they miss those 2 or 3 days, how will they progress then in the next session? Same question is full time.
Full time is really difficult. They have to make up those hours, and this is one of the big troubles with these block placements because all the universities fight for placements. So you do your placement. If you miss, the hospital doesn't have capacity most of the time to let you make up those hours. So the university has to find another placement to make up those hours, because 800 is the minimum to be registered. So if you can't prove you've done 800 hours, you can't be registered. So that's a real challenge. But with this flexible model, if you miss a placement on Friday, then, well, let's talk to the placement provider and see if you can do 3 days next week. And we can use the full week. So we can use Monday to Sunday for placement. So I think that will help with students being sick, maybe carer responsibilities, and stop putting the pressure on students that turn up to placement or else. Like, that's sort of the mentality. We want to change that. With the block placement, it's challenging, but because we've got our own hospital, what I'm thinking is that if you're out on industry elsewhere, you've missed, say, 2-3 days a week, then we can fit those hours in our healthcare system, which I think is a real draw card for us, and no other university has that luxury. So. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so for the next part of the session, we're going to leave it open for discussion, but I've decided, given the question we had before about reflection, I'm going to make you reflect in an essay of 500 words. We are going to pair and share, or more than 2 people if you want, so into groups, and to, I guess, discuss what it is that you've learnt today in terms of how might you apply it in your own context. If it's not in your specific context, then maybe you could talk about or share some ideas of reflection, because I think that was, that's what I love about these conversations, is that it does bring up lots of information and tips and sharing ideas. So if I can encourage you to maybe pair and share with someone you don't know, so you can meet someone else, introduce yourself, and just either what you've learnt from today, what has inspired